My stepdaughter humiliated me after her biological father returned, so I told her, "You were just a burden all these years," and walked out. But let me tell you how we got here, because this story will make your blood boil. My name is Mark. I'm 42 years old, and for 12 years I was the only father figure in Amy's life. I held her when she had nightmares. I held her hand on her first day of school. I taught her to ride a bike. I paid for everything from braces to college tuition, and she just threw it all back in my face like I was nothing. It started 12 years ago when I met Jennifer at a coffee shop downtown. She was this beautiful but exhausted single mom with a 6-year-old daughter named Amy, and honestly, I fell in love with both of them almost immediately. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Amy's biological father David had abandoned them when she was barely 4. The guy was a drug addict who couldn't handle responsibility, so he just vanished into thin air, leaving Jennifer to struggle alone with rent, childcare, and a traumatized little girl. When I came into their lives, Amy was this shy, damaged kid who flinched whenever a man raised his voice. She had nightmares about her dad leaving, and I made it my personal mission to heal that wound and show her what a real father looks like. I remember the exact moment she started trusting me. It was 3 months into dating Jennifer. Amy fell off her scooter and scraped her knee badly. She was crying and screaming for her mom, but Jennifer was inside cooking lunch, so I ran over, knelt down, cleaned the wound gently, put on a unicorn band-aid, and told her the dumbest joke about a superhero who was afraid of butterflies. She laughed through her tears, looked up at me with those big brown eyes, and said, "You're funny." And something in my chest just melted right there. Within a year, Jennifer and I got married, and I didn't just become Amy's stepdad. I became her dad. She called me Daddy from day one. Never Mark, always Daddy. And that word meant more to me than anything in this world. I took that role seriously, maybe too seriously, because I wanted to give her everything her biological father never did. Every single morning for 12 years, I woke up early to make her breakfast. Her favorite was chocolate chip pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. I drove her to ballet classes every Tuesday and Thursday, even though the studio was 40 minutes away and I had to leave work early. I sat through every single recital, even when she was just tree number 3 in the background. I helped her with homework every night, even though algebra made my brain hurt. I taught her to drive and nearly had 3 heart attacks when she almost hit a mailbox. I scared off her first boyfriend when she was 15 because that punk didn't respect her. I paid for her braces, her class trips to Washington, D.C., her prom dress that cost more than my first car, and eventually her college tuition because she was my daughter, and that's what fathers do. We had our traditions that I thought were sacred: Sunday morning pancakes where she'd try to flip them herself and make a huge mess, Friday movie nights where she'd fall asleep on my shoulder halfway through, summer road trips where we'd sing terribly to 80s music and laugh until our stomachs hurt, and every Father's Day, without fail, she'd make me breakfast in bed. It was usually burnt toast and watery scrambled eggs, but I ate every single bite like it was a Michelin star meal because it came from her heart. She was my daughter in every way that actually mattered. Biology be damned. DNA doesn't make you a father, showing up does, and I showed up every single day for 12 years. I thought Amy felt the same way about me. I really did. She'd tell her friends I was her dad. She'd hug me randomly and say, "I love you, Daddy." She wrote a school essay in 10th grade about how I saved her life, and I kept that essay in my wallet because it reminded me why I did everything I did. Fast forward to this year. Amy just turned 18. She graduated high school with honors, got accepted to a prestigious college with a partial scholarship, and I covered the remaining $30,000 per year because that's what fathers do for their children. Everything seemed perfect. Our relationship was stronger than ever, or at least I thought it was, until her graduation day, when my entire world shattered into a million pieces. The ceremony was beautiful. Amy looked absolutely stunning in her cap and gown, her hair done up all fancy. And when they called her name to receive her diploma, Jennifer and I jumped up cheering louder than any other parents in that packed auditorium. After the ceremony ended, we were outside taking family photos. Amy was laughing with her friends, posing with her diploma, and I was taking a million pictures on my phone because I'm that annoying proud dad. And then I saw him standing by the parking lot. David was there, Amy's biological father who'd been gone for 12 years, and he looked completely different from the drug-addicted mess Jennifer had described. He was clean-cut with nice clothes. He'd clearly gained healthy weight, and he was staring at Amy with this smile that made my stomach drop to the floor. Jennifer saw him at the same moment I did. She grabbed my arm hard enough to bruise, and whispered his name like she'd seen a ghost. And before either of us could react, David started walking toward us with this confident stride like he had every right to be there. Amy didn't recognize him at first. How could she? She was only 4 when he abandoned them. But when Jennifer said David out loud, I watched my daughter's face cycle through confusion, shock, realization, and something that looked terrifyingly like hope. David walked right up to us, completely ignored me and Jennifer, looked directly at Amy and said, "Hey, Princess, I know it's been a long time, but I've been getting my life together and I couldn't miss my daughter's graduation." And I wanted to punch him right there. I wanted to scream that he had no right to call her his daughter, but Jennifer's hand on my chest stopped me. Jennifer actually said, "Maybe you two should talk. He is her biological father after all." And those words felt like a knife twisting in my gut, because in 12 years Jennifer had never once referred to David as Amy's father. That title had always been mine. I'd earned it. I watched helplessly as Amy and David walked away together toward the parking lot, his hand on her shoulder like he had any right to touch her, and something inside my chest cracked so loudly I swear Jennifer must have heard it. She tried to reassure me right there in the parking lot. She said, "Mark, relax. It's just one conversation. Amy knows who raised her. This doesn't change anything between you two." But I could see it in Amy's eyes when she glanced back at me. There was curiosity there, excitement even, and I knew right then that everything was about to change. They talked for over an hour while Jennifer and I sat in the car in the most painful silence of my life. I kept checking my watch every 2 minutes, wondering what lies David was feeding her, what promises he was making that he'd never keep, and Jennifer just kept saying it would be fine, but her voice was shaking. I could see them through the windshield. David was animated, gesturing wildly with his hands, probably telling her some sob story about how he'd been sick or lost, or whatever excuse deadbeat dads use. And Amy was just nodding, listening to every word like it was gospel. At one point I saw her wipe her eyes and my heart broke because I realized she was crying. This man who abandoned her was making her cry, and I wanted to run over there and protect her like I'd done for 12 years, but Jennifer held me back. When Amy finally came back to the car, she wasn't the same girl who'd walked away. There was something different in her eyes, something distant and cold that I'd never seen before. She slid into the back seat without a word, put her earbuds in immediately, and when I turned around to ask if she was okay, she just stared at her phone and said, "I'm fine," in a tone that clearly meant leave me alone. The drive home was absolute torture. I kept trying to catch her eye in the rearview mirror, trying to connect with my daughter, but she was completely checked out, texting someone furiously, probably him, and ignoring both me and Jennifer completely. When we finally got home, I'd spent 3 hours that morning preparing her favorite celebration dinner: homemade lasagna, garlic bread, Caesar salad, and a chocolate cake that said, "Congratulations, Amy. We're so proud of you," in purple frosting because purple was her favorite color. She walked past the dining room without even glancing at the table, went straight upstairs to her room, and slammed the door so hard a picture frame fell off the hallway wall. Jennifer followed her upstairs immediately, leaving me alone standing in front of a table set for 3 with food that was getting cold and a cake nobody would eat. I sat down in my chair and just stared at Amy's empty seat for what felt like hours. All the silverware perfectly placed, her favorite purple napkin folded exactly how she liked it. And I had this sinking feeling in my stomach that the family I'd built was crumbling right in front of me. Around midnight, I was still sitting at that table. I'd put all the food away, but I couldn't bring myself to go upstairs, and that's when I heard Amy's door open. For a second, I thought maybe she was coming down to apologize, to talk to me, to be my daughter again. But instead, I heard her voice on the phone, laughing, actually laughing like nothing was wrong. I crept to the bottom of the stairs and heard her say, "Yeah, I can't believe I finally met you. I have so many questions. Can we meet again tomorrow?" And my blood ran cold because I knew exactly who she was talking to. She continued, "I know, right? It's crazy that you're back. Mom said you were sick, but you look great now." And I realized David had fed her some story and she'd bought it completely. Then I heard the words that made my heart stop. She said, "I always wondered what it would be like to have my real dad around." And I swear something inside me died right there on those stairs. "Real dad," she'd said, like I was some kind of substitute who'd been keeping her seat warm until the original came back. I went back to the kitchen, poured myself a drink I definitely didn't need, and sat in the dark trying to process what was happening. Jennifer came down around 1 a.m. She looked exhausted and guilty, and before I could even ask, she said, she wants to see him again. I told her it was okay. "Mark, you have to understand he's her biological father," and I just looked at my wife like I didn't even know her anymore. I asked her, what about me? What am I to her now? And Jennifer couldn't even look me in the eye when she said, you'll always be important to her. This doesn't change that. But we both knew she was lying. The next morning, I woke up early like always, went downstairs to make Amy's favorite breakfast, hoping maybe things would be normal again. But when she came down, she walked right past me without saying good morning, poured herself a bowl of cereal, and sat at the table scrolling through her phone. I put the plate of Mickey Mouse pancakes in front of her, the same breakfast I'd made her thousands of times, and she looked at them like they were disgusting, pushed the plate away, and said, I'm not really hungry, without even looking up from her phone. I asked her how she was feeling, if she wanted to talk about yesterday, and she just shrugged and said, I'm meeting David for lunch. He's taking me to that fancy restaurant downtown. And the way she said his name, with excitement and pride, felt like a slap across my face. I tried to stay calm. I really did. I said, Amy, sweetheart, I know you're curious about him, but you need to be careful. He left you once before. And she finally looked up at me with these cold eyes and said, maybe he had his reasons. Mark, you don't know what he went through. And that was the first time in 12 years she'd called me Mark instead of Daddy. Jennifer was standing in the doorway and said nothing, absolutely nothing to defend me. And Amy got up, put her bowl in the sink, and said, I need to get ready, before disappearing upstairs. I looked at Jennifer and said, are you really going to let this happen? Are you going to let him destroy everything we built? And she had the audacity to say, Mark, you're being dramatic. She's 18. She has a right to know her biological father. And I realized I was completely alone in this fight. That afternoon, while Amy was out with David, I sat in my home office staring at 12 years of photos on my wall. Amy's first day of kindergarten, where she held my hand so tight. Her first ballet recital, where she was so nervous she almost threw up. Her 16th birthday, where she hugged me and said I was the best dad in the world. And I wondered how we got from there to here. Amy came home that evening glowing, absolutely glowing, and spent the next 2 hours in her room on video call with David. I could hear her laughing through the walls, that same laugh she used to have with me. When she finally came down for dinner, she announced David invited me to spend next weekend with him. He has this amazing apartment downtown, and he wants to make up for lost time. And Jennifer immediately said, that sounds nice, honey, while I just sat there feeling like a ghost in my own home. I said, Amy, we had plans next weekend. Remember, we were going to look at dorm room stuff for college. And she rolled her eyes like I was the most annoying person in the world and said, we can do that another time. Mark, this is important to me. And there it was again, Mark, not Daddy, just Mark. The next week was absolute hell. Amy barely acknowledged my existence. She'd come home from her daily meetings with David and talk endlessly about how cool he was, how he understood her, how he was taking her to all these places I'd never taken her. I tried to remind her about all the places we'd been together. Disney World when she was 8, the Grand Canyon when she was 12, New York City for her 16th birthday. But she just waved her hand dismissively and said, yeah, but David's taking me to Paris next month, actual Paris. And I said, Amy, you start college in 2 months. You can't just go to Paris. And she looked at me with pure contempt and said, you're not my father. You don't get to tell me what I can and can't do. And that was the moment I realized I'd completely lost her. The breaking point came on Father's Day, a day that had always been sacred in our house. The one day a year where Amy made everything about me and showed me how much she appreciated everything I did. I woke up that Sunday morning with a tiny bit of hope. Maybe this would be the day she remembered who I was, who we were. But when I came downstairs, the house was empty. There was no breakfast in bed, no burnt toast, no watery eggs, no handmade card, nothing, just a silent, empty house. I checked my phone and saw that Amy had posted on Instagram an hour earlier. It was a photo of her and David at some fancy brunch place. They were both holding mimosas and laughing, and the caption destroyed me. It said, First Father's Day with my real dad, making up for lost time, love you so much already, with a red heart emoji and about 20 heart eye emojis. I sat on my bed staring at that post for probably an hour, reading it over and over, torturing myself with it, and I noticed she'd tagged the location. It was the same restaurant where I'd made reservations 3 months ago for the 3 of us to celebrate Father's Day as a family. She'd taken my reservation, my day, my restaurant, and given it all to him. I called Jennifer, who was supposedly at her sister's house, and I said, did you know about this? And there was a long pause before she said, Amy mentioned she wanted to spend Father's Day with David. I didn't think you'd mind. And I absolutely lost it. I said, you didn't think I'd mind. Are you insane? I've been her father for 12 years. And Jennifer got defensive and said, Biologically, he's her father, Mark. You need to accept that. And I hung up on her because I couldn't listen to another word. Amy came home that evening around 9 p.m. She was laughing on her phone with David, and she walked right past me sitting in the living room like I was invisible. I said, "Amy," firmly, and she actually looked annoyed that I'd interrupted her call. She said, "Hold on," to David and looked at me with such irritation and said, "What?" And I said, "It's Father's Day. Did you forget?" And she had the audacity to look confused for a second before saying, "Oh, yeah, sorry, I was with my dad today," and that emphasis on my dad, making it crystal clear she didn't mean me, was the final straw. I said, "I see. Well, I hope you had a wonderful time," and my voice was cold, distant, nothing like the warm father I'd always been, and she actually looked surprised like she'd expected me to just accept this treatment forever. The next morning I woke up to more Instagram posts. Amy had created a whole photo album titled Getting to Know Dad, filled with pictures of her and David from the past 3 weeks. And in every single photo, she looked happier than I'd ever seen her. I scrolled through her profile and realized she'd archived every single photo of us together, 12 years of memories just hidden away like they never happened, like I never happened. I went to work that day but couldn't focus. I kept checking her social media like a masochist, watching her erase me from her life in real time. Then came the day that broke me completely. I came home from work early and walked into the living room where Amy was sitting on the couch with David. They were looking at apartments near her college on his laptop. Amy told me David had offered to co-sign a lease so she could have her own place instead of the dorms, and my heart sank because that was supposed to be our plan. David looked at me with this smug smile and thanked me for taking care of his daughter while he was getting his life together, saying he was back now so he'd take it from here. And he said it like I'd been babysitting instead of being a father. I told him she'd been my daughter for 12 years, and he didn't just get to walk back in and erase that. And David actually laughed and said biologically she was his. I was just keeping her safe until he could come back, and Amy didn't say anything. She just sat there not defending me. David suggested they go grab dinner while I took time to cool off, dismissing me in my own house, and Amy stood up with him without hesitation. I asked if we could just talk, just the two of us, and she looked at me with such coldness and said there was nothing to talk about. I needed to accept that David was her father, and that wasn't going to change. I packed a bag that night and waited until morning to say what I needed to say to Amy's face. The next morning, Amy was eating cereal scrolling through her phone, and I told her I needed to say something. I told her I'd spent 12 years being her father. I gave her everything I had. I sacrificed everything, and I loved her like she was my own blood, but she rolled her eyes, and that pushed me over the edge. I told her the truth, that she was a burden all these years, a financial burden, an emotional burden, a time burden, and I carried it willingly because I thought I was building something real. But I was wrong. She never saw me as her real father and never would. Amy's face went pale. Jennifer came running downstairs shouting, but I kept going and told Amy I was done trying to be her father, done competing with a fantasy, done being treated like nothing. I picked up my bag and told her to enjoy her real dad. I hope he's everything she dreamed of, because she just lost the one person who actually showed up for her. Amy started crying and called me daddy and asked me to wait, but I knew it was manipulation. I told Jennifer I'd be in touch about the divorce and walked out while Amy stood at the door crying and screaming for me to come back, but I didn't look back. I drove to a hotel, checked in indefinitely, and immediately blocked both Jennifer and Amy on everything. Their phone numbers, social media, email. I cut off every possible way they could reach me because I needed complete separation. 3 weeks passed in a blur. I was going through the motions at work, meeting with a divorce lawyer, trying to figure out my life without them. Then my friend Jake, who's a police detective, called and told me they'd been investigating David, and what he told me made my blood run cold. David's investment company was a complete scam, a Ponzi scheme with warrants out in 3 different states. And he'd specifically targeted Amy because she was young, naive, and easy to manipulate. Jake explained that David had convinced Amy to take out a personal loan in her name, told her it was a smart investment opportunity that would make her financially independent, and the moment the money hit the account, David cleaned it out and disappeared without a trace. Jake said Amy had filed a police report 3 days ago. She was drowning in debt with her credit completely destroyed before her adult life had even really started, and David was nowhere to be found, probably running the same con on another desperate family in another state. 2 hours later, Jake called again and said Jennifer had been desperately trying to reach me through him because I'd blocked them both. She'd asked him to tell me that Amy had been completely devastated for weeks, hadn't eaten or slept properly, cried for hours every day, and kept saying she destroyed the only person who ever truly loved her. Jake said Jennifer was begging me to come home, that Amy needed me, but I told him I needed time to think. That night, I received a text from an unknown number, and when I opened it, I realized Amy had texted me from her friend's phone. It was a long message saying she knew she had no right to contact me, but she needed me to know she was the worst person in the world, that she'd thrown away 12 years of unconditional love for a fantasy, that everything I'd warned her about David came true, and she understood if I hated her forever. She said I was her real father, the only father that ever mattered, and she'd realized it too late. I stared at that message for hours, torn between wanting to help her and remembering that cold smile when she said real father, remembering her laughing with David while I sat alone on Father's Day. I texted back to that same number and told her I'd meet her for coffee, not as her father, but as someone who used to care about her. And when I saw her at that coffee shop, she looked like she'd aged 5 years, eyes red and swollen, and she started sobbing when she saw me. We talked for 3 hours. She told me everything. How David had love-bombed her with attention and gifts. How he'd made her question everything about our relationship. Told her I was only nice to her because I wanted something from Jennifer, and that blood family was the only family that mattered. She showed me the debt notices, the destroyed credit report, told me she dropped out of college because she couldn't afford it anymore and was working 2 jobs trying to pay off the loan David had convinced her to take. I looked at this broken girl who used to be my daughter, and I made a decision that surprised me. I told her I'd help her with the debt one last time, not because she deserved it, but because I wasn't going to let David destroy her future. But I also told her I wasn't coming back, not as her father, not as Jennifer's husband, because some words can't be taken back and some damage can't be undone. I helped her set up a payment plan, co-signed for a small apartment so she wouldn't be homeless, gave her money to get back on her feet, but made it clear this was closure, not reconciliation. 2 months have passed since that meeting. I've moved to a new city for a fresh start. The divorce from Jennifer is almost finalized, and I'm slowly rebuilding my life without the family I thought I had. Amy texts me occasionally from different numbers with updates about her life. She got into community college and is working hard to rebuild her credit, and she always ends her messages with variations of "I'm sorry" and "I love you, Dad." But I rarely respond because I'm still healing from everything that happened. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice, if I should have forgiven her completely and gone back to being her father. But then I remember that Father's Day post, that cold look in her eyes when she called me Mark, and I know that our relationship died that day, not because of what I said, but because of what she chose. The truth is that being a parent doesn't mean accepting abuse and disrespect. It doesn't mean sacrificing your dignity and self-worth, and it doesn't mean staying in relationships that are destroying you, even when those relationships are with your children. I gave Amy 12 years of unconditional love, and she threw it away for a con artist who saw her as nothing more than an easy target. And while I'm sad about how things ended, I'm not responsible for fixing the mess she made. Maybe someday, years from now, we'll rebuild something new, not father and daughter, but 2 people who used to mean everything to each other and are learning to be civil. But for now, I'm focused on healing myself and remembering that I'm worth more than how Amy and Jennifer treated me. So what do you think about this story? Was I right to walk away, or should I have given her another chance? Let me know in the comments, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.